Hey everybody, welcome to Facebook Live. Adam Contos here at RE/MAX headquarters. We're doing a big Facebook Live today. Why? Well, this is a great platform for us to connect with you and everybody else in the industry for that matter. So, obviously on Facebook Live, you get to ask questions. And go ahead, ask them. We will get to those throughout the program today. And if we don't get to your question today, we'll get back to you after the program with an answer. So anyhow, we have two very special guests with us here today. The first one I really look forward to introducing, Steve Murray, president, owner, founder of Real Trends, industry analyst and expert in the field since 1977. Steve, welcome to our Facebook Live.
Thanks for having me here. It's fun.
Glad to have you here today. So, Steve is an expert in the industry, and he's going to help us understand the results of the Real Trends 500 report today. Also, we have Kevin Dahl, executive director and industry analyst with RE/MAX, over 30 years in the company. Kevin is also an industry expert. He's going to dig into a lot of the RE/MAX aspects of the Real Trends 500 report as well. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks, Adam.
Glad to have you here as well. Steve, let's start off with, what is the Real Trends 500 report and how is it produced?
It's a ranking of the top 500 brokerage companies in the United States, ranked by closed transaction sides from the prior calendar year. And we've been doing this since I think our first publication was 1988. And it was the Real Trends 25.
Wow, Real Trends 25 to the Real Trends 500.
Yes.
That's grown, and you certainly have tracked a lot of trends in the process, I'm assuming, benchmarking a lot in the industry with the, the growth and contraction of the industry, of the brokerages, things like that. How are these firms ranked?
We rank them by closed transaction sides from the prior calendar year, and then we redo it a second time by closed sales volume. And so that's the 500. And this past year, you had to have done, for instance, 1,899 closed transaction sides to be in the 500. That number, that lower level, has been moving up year after year for the past few years.
Wow, which goes along with the marketplace, I guess, right?
That's right. There's consolidation going on in the brokerage business, and clearly it's reflected in the 500.
Okay, so what are the qualifiers to get into the Real Trends 500?
Well, we invite every brokerage company in the country, and that invitation goes out to all the Association of Realtors, all the MLSs, and the national brand networks are all invited to submit their brokers or to invite brokers to submit to this. Because for a brokerage company, there is no admission charge, and it is not compulsory. So brokers can choose to file or opt out if they prefer. We get great assistance from companies like yours, Adam, who do a lot of the research for us because you have that data about your affiliates and help us by pinpointing who these people are and providing information, which makes it easier for us to identify all these people. That's by the way, it's grown from 500 or 600 firms being ranked to almost 1,800 firms being ranked.
Wow.
Is that a lot of the national companies, a lot of the realtor associations, MLSs, really want to make sure their members or their affiliates get the opportunity to be ranked either on the 500 or the broad report, which is the Real Trends 500 and up and comers.
Awesome. So let's talk about results here. What are some of the big picture results that you saw in this survey?
Interesting, the Real Trends 500, we'll focus on the 500, 17 over 16 grew by 3.3% in closed sides, which is triple the rate that the industry itself grew in housing sales last year. That's fairly rare for the largest firms to grow market share in an up market. In fact, it's happened the last 3 years, but before that, it had never happened before. So we are seeing consolidation. We are seeing that the cost for a broker to grow, to be competitive, is you have to get bigger to be effective, to recruit good people, develop good people, to deploy technology. All that stuff has to happen, and we see firms getting bigger. Another, we see RE/MAX, talking about RE/MAX. If again, now I go back to that big group, the Real Trends 500 up and comers, almost 1,800 companies, RE/MAX is almost a third of that. 565 RE/MAX affiliates qualified for that.
Wow.
Which is the highest number ever. And hundreds, or 150, or a big number ahead of whoever had number 2 on that list. So it's something for RE/MAX affiliates to be very, very proud of.
So 565 out of how many qualified?
About 1,755.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like the RE/MAX report plus
Right,
some others,
it's kind of
right?
like, yeah, we let other people come in. No, no, I mean, the one thing people need to understand, and you know this, and Kevin knows this, we don't play favorites in this. You can't write us a check to get higher ranked. Every firm has to have some form of independent third-party verification of their numbers. And when you look back all those years ago when we started this, there were no standards at all. And brokers were making claims all over the place, and there was no way to verify that. That's what really caused us initially to say, well, let's try and bring some standards to how people count their performance.
Well, and that's great. You know, we obviously we value the integrity of the report and everything that you put out from Real Trends. It's extraordinarily valuable to the industry, to the consumer, to the agents and the brokers that they have, you know, a fair, uninfluenced opinion on what's going on out there, so they can make the proper decisions. So, were all of these brokerages in there the large or mega brokerages that were surveyed?
I mean, obviously, these are the ones on the Real Trends 500 are the largest companies in the United States. I mean, you think about that's the largest 500 out of 155,000 estimated brokerage companies. And here's the fun part. Those 500, they did about 30% of all the closed transactions in the country, but they represent, you can do the math, about 0.3% of all the brokerage companies in the country doing 30% of the business.
That's amazing. So,
right.
Again, welcome to everybody to our Facebook Live event. Adam Contos here at RE/MAX World Headquarters with Steve Murray, Real Trends, and the Real Trends 500 report, which is what we're talking about today, as well as Kevin Dahl, our Executive Director of Industry Analysis. We're talking about some great industry reports here today that Steve has put out that really describe the performance levels of the industry. Let's talk about the agent here real quick. So Kevin, let me throw this your way. How does the average RE/MAX agent compare to the average competing agent in the marketplace typically?
2 to 1. And it's hard to think of another industry where there's that advantage, but RE/MAX agents outproduce the competing agents in the Real Trends 500 2 to 1. So last year, and by the way, thank you and your team for all the good work you do. The information is valuable not only for us, but for all the big businesses and the small ones. But 17 home sales for a RE/MAX agent in 2017 versus 7.5 for all competitors aggregated together. And to put that another way, a RE/MAX agent is selling a home on average every 3 weeks. A competing agent is selling it every 6 weeks. So you can see that over a period of time, the RE/MAX agents have doubled the sales experience. And you can throw in the fact that the average RE/MAX agent has been with RE/MAX for 8.6 years, and they've been licensed for 15 years. So do the math and you see a considerable, and this is the 8th year that we know of for certain that RE/MAX agents have doubled up on the competitors. So you can see it's a huge experience advantage because RE/MAX agents are selling so many homes.
Wow. So huge benefit to not just the brokerage and the agents and the agents that join RE/MAX through that power of affiliation, doing more business with others, doing more business. Home buyer and seller impact. You know, obviously, it's in the big picture, it's about the consumer. How can we in this business help the consumer the very best? Because if we make the consumer happy, you know, they want to continue to do business with us, and we help them achieve their dream of buying and selling, you know, the homes that they dream of. So, Steve, how do you see this, you know, the spread of productivity impact the consumers?
We're fairly certain from consumer studies we've done in this industry, not directly related to the Real Trends 500, but consumers more and more, even if they know an agent and or they're referred to someone, they're going online to check them out. Productivity, years of experience, activity in a particular community are all attributes that are going to favor experienced agents like the ones RE/MAX has in the future. We think consumers are going to become more and more selective about which agents they use as the market gets more competitive to find the right home, get the right price. It's going to become more selective about which agents people use because it's a huge asset and it's a very complicated market. So we think, and listen, the truth is, RE/MAX on average there's no question about the data that Kevin just shared. It's black and white. It is what it is. There are other companies, brands that have really top performing agents, and I don't mean to say that those top performing agents won't also benefit from these trends. RE/MAX just has more of them, right? Which is based on what Kevin shared.
Right.
And so you would think this benefits the RE/MAX system focused on trying to recruit and retain and develop highly productive salespeople.
And I think an important thing to think of from the consumer standpoint is the idea that the more productive agents have the wherewithal to conduct their business in a longer view fashion. If you're doing less than 7 sales a year, less than 8 sales a year, excuse me, you're really focused on that next transaction, that next home sale. And if you're doing twice that many, like a RE/MAX agent, yes, you're still focused on making that transaction is all that it can be, but you have a longer view of things. You're thinking of that customer. You're thinking this customer can be a lifetime customer. This customer can be a relationship that produces repeat business, produces referrals. You're just getting into that mode where it's really, you're thinking long term again. You're not thinking about the next deal. You're able to have the opportunity to think of your business and one thing I'm, without besmirching any of our competitors, but some of our competitors have tried to match us in market share by hiring a lot more agents. So they may have twice as many agents as we do so that they can maintain the same market share. And then that reminds me of, I don't mean this to be gut-wrenching, but surgery.
Uh-oh.
Surgery.
Oh, yeah.
Surgery.
Are you going to be gut-wrenching?
Let us have it, Kevin.
Hope not. I was hesitant to compare real estate transaction to surgery, but it is sometimes, and especially if you don't have the right agent, it can be like surgery. But my point is the consumer has a choice between the hospital with the most agents, with the most surgeons, who are probably agents, the most surgeons, or they can choose the hospital with the most experienced surgeons. And I think that's the parallel that we can draw from that. It's a serious business. You want it done right, and you want someone doing it who really has their experience. So that's what's in it for the consumer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and for the broker as well. We see in Steve's report the quality of the brokers that have this productivity level. I mean, it's without question, very high standard in these brokerages. And it's exciting to us to see how much presence we have in the report as a result, because it's about doing the right thing for the agent, doing the right thing for the consumer, and the brokers running just a great operation that serves their community well. And we've got a lot of great tools in the RE/MAX system to help these brokers gain these agents and play this long game that Kevin's talking about here. Kevin, what any of those tools that stand out to you?
Well, yeah, and I think even for our agents, because our agents have this benefit of working with lots of top professionals and the idea of playing better golf with better golfers, we have materials to help them demonstrate that. One in particular is RE/MAX versus the industry, and it compares RE/MAX line by line. It compares RE/MAX with our major competitors. The first column deals with homes sold per agent. last year on average. And again, we've already established that that's very dominating for RE/MAX. The second, another metric of great importance is unaided awareness, brand awareness, which if you boil that down, what it means is more buyers and sellers think of RE/MAX than any other brand. It's just that power. RE/MAX comes to mind. That's how well known we are, more so than any other brand. And then, of course, it establishes how many agents are there in these various networks? How many offices are there? RE/MAX has more offices in the United States than any other brand, which you can interpret to mean we're in more communities. We're not a big, we have all size brokerages, so we can work in all size communities. And then we also have the largest footprint in the world. RE/MAX is in more countries and territories than any other brand. So materials like that, everyone can find them on remax.com/above. Above is our digital magazine, and lots of great materials there. In particular, RE/MAX versus industry could be downloaded from above.
Well, and I guess RE/MAX versus the industry is one that Kevin, you extrapolate from Steve's report and build up. I know it's one of the most popular pieces that I see shared on social and used in listing presentations, things like that. Once again, Adam Contos here on this Facebook Live. Here we're at RE/MAX headquarters with Steve Murray, president of RealTrends, talking about the RealTrends 500 report. Also with me here is Kevin Dahl, our executive director of industry analysis. So Kevin, he's kind of like the CIA in the real estate industry. You know, he knows all those little things, you know, where the bodies are buried and what the numbers mean and things like that, and really good at taking a look at these reports, figuring out what's going on, you know, understanding the metrics, the feelings behind those metrics, and you know, talking to these experts such as Steve here. So another question for you gentlemen, how has the growth of franchises and mega brokerages impacted the RealTrends 500? Steve?
You know, the truth is you go back 20 years ago and the RealTrends 500 was dominated by independent brokers. Now it's the other way around. In the last 20 years, it totally shifted. I'm using approximate numbers, but if you go back 20 years ago, it would have been 70 to 75% would have been independent, and 30%, 25% would have been nationally affiliated. Now those numbers are completely shifted. And the number of independent, privately branded companies that are on the RealTrends 500 have shrunk, and those that are affiliated with the national brand have grown substantially, and they swap places. I mean, for example, you know, we pointed out this year that in the top 10, there's a RE/MAX company there. I think that's only happened once before, maybe twice. But you got RE/MAX results at Minneapolis, St. Paul in the top 10 this year. That's pretty rare. That's a huge company. We haven't seen those kind of really super large RE/MAX firms, and now there's a half a dozen probably in the top 50 in the country. I mean, we saw a company like HomeSmart, which is 10, 12 years old now. We saw EXP in the top 10, and they're less than 10 years old. We know that if they had submitted their numbers or permitted the numbers to be published, a company like Redfin would have been in the top 10 in closed transactions. So what we're seeing that you go back 20 years ago and the way things were and the way things are now, we're seeing a RE/MAX, we're seeing Keller Williams, we're seeing some HomeSmart companies rise in the rankings, displacing some former independents.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then when you add the franchises together, you get the franchisees of RE/MAX or any other brands together, you get this tremendous force that you don't get with individual brokerages as well.
In many major markets in the country, if you look at the top 5 brokers in any of those given markets, it's common now for 2 or 3 of those to be affiliated with people like RE/MAX, Coldwell Banker, or Better Homes and Gardens, some cases Keller Williams. That wasn't that way 10 and 20 years ago. The top 5 firms, there may be 1 franchise broker. Now it's 3 or 4 of them in a lot of markets. And it's just a whole change.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people want to know about the technology going in. How is the technology affecting, and what is the play in that in the ranking of these brokerages?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say if there were a way for us to clearly identify the impact of technology on the growth of brokerages, we would publish that all day long. Unfortunately, there isn't any. There's none that says technology in and by itself will cause a brokerage to become larger. And I know several brokerages that are on the Real Trends 500, they use Palm Pilot by comparison, and yet they grow every year. I mean, some of the brokerages that have the most rudimentary technology are some of the fastest growing. Now, that's probably going to change, and people will accuse me in Real Trends of being Luddites or something. But the fact is, show me the evidence that your $5 million website and your $3 million CRM and your $2 million transaction manager has caused you to grow faster than your competitors, and we'll run that story. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you can't have any.
Right.
I don't mean to say that. If you're going to compete and grow a great brokerage company, you better have a really good, effective website. You better have it there. But to give you the contrary, you also should have policies and programs that will cause your agents to respond to customers who ask for help through your website.
Right.
And that's where the piece is missing. You absolutely have to have transaction management and digital signature. You can't compete in the world today without it. But everybody's got it. I mean, every decent agent. I'd be confident that every productive rematch agent, which is most of them, they're all using some kind of transaction system.
So it's a function of the table stakes technology and a quality agent.
Right.
Okay.
You got to have both.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So
Now, and what will change, last thing, and you've talked about it, and some of the other people in the industry have talked about it, what will start to change is how national companies like yours and Kevin's and large brokers who can afford to, how they're going to start using information. We call it big data, but just as importantly, in a system that understands that information, that's going to start to become very critical. More so than just the software.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin's kind of our system that understands that big data.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Well, yeah, and yeah, you do. You see all the big brands are working on that and realize the importance of it, and certainly know Adam is in the middle of that. One point that I see, though, and I wondered if you had thoughts on it, was the idea that we have seen these huge competitors come in that are essentially tech companies that are brokerages, and in their model, it's technology first and agent second, maybe a salary agent, maybe an agent that's inexperienced. And then with the more traditional companies such as RE/MAX, you have the agent is the centerpiece of this. The relationship, the surgery, if you will, is done by a top-notch agent, but they need good technology as well. Do you see that balance staying or getting out of kilter? Technology versus the agent.
I mean, again, I'll swim against the tide here. You've got to compete in the future. Having good technology is a given. It's going to be required. But it's like I wrote an article just recently. I said, look, RE/MAX is going to build the best platform in the industry, along with Realogy, Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway, Redfin, Compass. Every company is going to build the best platform in the industry. Great. Now what are you going to compete on?
Agent quality.
Agent quality, which will never go away. Even Redfin, who is a real estate technology company, two interesting points. They talk about their lead agents and how productive they are. Another example, Compass, a, quote, realty company that's a tech company. Well, for both of them, I got a question for them. If your technology is so good, how is it you have to spend so much money getting customers?
Good question.
And agents. If it is that good, why are you having to spend so much time and money to get customers and agents to come to you? Because according to you, you're so far ahead of RE/MAX, Keller Williams, Realogy, and Berkshire Hathaway, it's not even close. But this big data and artificial intelligence, this is a whole nother game. I mean, the Real Trends 500 is a little tiny, like big data, artificial intelligence thing, right? We can look at it and go, how come that company is, you know, we did a study back in '06, looked back 10 years, looked at the 10 best performing brokers in the country in terms of growth in agents, productivity, total sales. And we interviewed agents in those companies. They didn't talk about technology or marketing. They talked about trust, relationship in the broker owner.
Interesting. And that boils down to that quality agent who's the master of the relationship, the trust, the transparency in the transaction, and facilitating this rather complex situation that the consumer is involved in.
If it's just about tech, you ask any good agent out there, and we've interviewed, you have too, all kinds, with all different companies and brands. That one-to-one meeting with a client or customer is what determines who gets the assignment and how successful that will go. It has less to do with which transaction management system that agent is using.
Right.
That's my point.
That's right. So let's take time for one question. I know we've had a few come in. Tyrone Davids from Canada. How are teams clouding the stats that are being shared regarding agent production?
Well, I think you and Kevin both know we also provide, we're the company that does all the agent and team rankings.
Yes.
In the U.S. We are trying to come to Canada, by the way, Tyrone. We're trying to get there. Here's the issue is the number of teams and the size of teams are growing very rapidly and have for the last 4 years. I think if you go out 4 years ago, for instance, on our rankings, there were 1,700 teams in the U.S. that did more than 75 sides or 30 million. Last year there were 4,700.
Wow.
So teams are growing in number and their average size, both. And we think that's going to continue to happen. Next wave is teams now becoming their own brokerages, which we're starting to see.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, once again, Adam Contos here, RE/MAX headquarters on our Facebook Live. We've been talking to Steve Murray of Real Trends about the Real Trends 500 report, and Kevin Dahl, our Executive Director of Industry Analysis here at RE/MAX headquarters. Thank you both for being with us here today. We've taken a question from the audience. You know what? I think we have time for one more question from the audience. We'll jump right into it here. Sandy Meyer, RE/MAX Gold in Grand Forks, North Dakota. What are your thoughts on eXp Realty and its cloud office environment? I know we talked a little bit about technology. Sandy, I'll jump in a little bit and give just my 2 cents on this. You know, there's a lot of competition out there, and we see a lot of, especially during a growing marketplace, we see a lot of competitors coming in. eXp, I think they've been around for about 5 years, and it's an interesting business model. Very cloud-based, if you will. But really, what we look at in the quality of our agents and what we offer to the agents, the consumer, as well as in the brokerages is, we talked about the basics of technology. And technology is important, yes. Cloud, just about everything's in the cloud today. Let's just kind of face the reality of that. That's where data is stored. That's where software as a service is provided from. But realistically, it boils down to, and I truly believe that in this industry, there is nothing more powerful than an agent with some grit and some excitement that goes out and spreads their business cards throughout the world through their marketplace, meets people, and creates listings. Because we know listings, that's the gold in the marketplace right now. You have to be going out and developing listings. In order to do that, you need a skilled agent. You need somebody who's had listings before, who's sold those listings before, and helped the consumer accomplish that challenge of going through the transaction. So ultimately, it's I guess the cloud's a place for people to hang out. But business is done face to face. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
We talked about this earlier. I mean, my attitude is there's a group of agents out of the 1.4 million realtors in the United States. There's some group of them that feel perfectly comfortable working out of a home office with no office meetings to go to except in the cloud. and who are perfectly content to work that way. I don't think that's a huge group. I think real estate agents, I mean, I have a lot of clients where it seems like trite and old-fashioned, they like going to sales meetings. You know, whether EXP with agents and teams, say in a Denver area where we all live, if they decide themselves to like get together now and then just to share ideas, information, experiences, really good agents tend to be people who dwell on relationships. But I think EXP, there's a market for what they do out there. It's fairly low cost for an agent or team, but they're missing kind of that connection with other people, and I wonder how well that will serve them.
And from the consumer standpoint, going back to RE/MAX versus industry comparison, you'll see EXP at the bottom because of the home sales per agent. They're not getting a lot of interaction with, per agent, they're not getting a lot of interaction with the buyers and sellers, so the experience is not there.
Okay, we're social creatures in this business, I guess.
Not all, but I think a great majority of them.
But a lot.
A lot.
It's
yeah.
And you know there will be those that gravitate towards different business models.
Yeah.
And
always.
And you know we're all in the cloud. I can say that. But it's how interactive and how much business you want to get out there and do. So anyhow. Once again, Adam Contos here on Facebook Live from RE/MAX headquarters. We've been talking to Steve Murray from Real Trends and Kevin Dahl, Executive Director of Industry Analysis from RE/MAX headquarters. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. It's been very insightful. Learned a lot about the Real Trends 500, a report that almost a third of the positions are held by RE/MAX brokerages. So yeah. I mean, just an amazing. Report that you put together, very impartial, but we're proud of the results, of course. So we're glad to have you here and your expertise in the industry and yours as well, Kevin. So
thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
both
for
of you.
having me. Yep.
And everybody out there in Facebook Live land, it's great to have you here today. Thank you for the questions. If we didn't get to some of your questions, we will make sure that we do respond to those outside of this Facebook Live broadcast. You know, for these reports, RE/MAX submits agent and brokerage statistics on behalf of all the agents and offices for reports such as Steve's, as well as several others in the industry, like the 1,000 and America's Best, things like that. So look for your rankings throughout the year in these different reports. I know we've got some coming out in several months. Also, check the links check for links to documents with detail on today's topic of RE/MAX in the Real Trends 500 here on the We Are RE/MAX Facebook page. Thank you to Steve and Kevin, and thanks to all of you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.